Representative Maxine Waters, she is calling for a federal probe because according to her, there are gangsters in the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. She's not the only one saying it. Representative Maxine Waters on Wednesday requested that the United States Department of Justice investigate allegations that a violent gang of deputies called the Executioners runs operations at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Compton Station. This has been a narrative in LA County for decades. For decades, okay? Who's in charge of them right now? Who's in charge of these so-called gangsters? This guy, Sheriff Alex Villanueva, he's in charge. Now, according to the reports, even 3 total whistleblowers, these gangsters inside of the sheriff's office marked themselves with a particular tattoo after committing an act of violence in order to gain entry. That is the tattoo. The whistleblower, Deputy Ostraberto Gonzalez, said under oath that after a shooting, members will have a party at a bar and call it a 998 debrief. That is a code referencing the code for a deputy involved shooting. Secret groups of deputies with matching tattoos and names like the Vikings, Regulators, 3,000 Boys, and the Banditos have plagued the agency for decades. Here's a snippet of a report that came out not too long ago this year.
CBS News is taking a closer look at the lives lost to alleged gangs within the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department in our special Latina Moms, a Fight for Justice. Several deputies within the East Los Angeles Sheriff's Department claim some Latinos in the department are involved in the so-called Banditos gang. As part of the initiation process, those deputies say the Banditos force potential members to assault or even shoot innocent bystanders. They also claim their targets are often young Latinos in the community. According to a recent study by the Loyola Law School Center for Juvenile Law and Policy, violent groups like the Banditos have been operating for decades with little to no consequences.
Little to no consequences. Once again, Representative Maxine Waters, she is calling for a federal probe. Now, there has been investigations. You've had investigations happen. Absolutely nothing or very little comes from those investigations. There was a victim named Guardado, shot in the back, and the officers involved were simply relieved of duty. The deputies involved in Guardado's shooting, Miguel Vega and Chris Hernandez, were relieved of duty in December in an unrelated case in which a skateboarder says the deputies kidnapped and threatened him before Vega crashed the patrol car, leaving him injured. Gonzalez, who's the whistleblower, identified the pair as prospective members of the Executioners, the gang in question. As for Gonzalez, the whistleblower, he's now on leave from the department in fear of his life, he said. His testimony has inspired 2 more deputies to come forward with similar stories of the Compton station. Wait a minute. The whistleblower, Gonzalez, is on leave and in fear of his life. What happened to most of the cops are good cops? You see, if most of the cops are good cops, the bad cops should be afraid. The bad cops should be the ones afraid of what will happen to them, penalty, persecution, prosecution, etc. They should be afraid, but they're not. They're still on the beat. They still got their gun and badge. They're still on the job. But the whistleblower who exposed much of this madness is now in fear of his very life. LA County has paid out at least $55 million in settlements in cases in which sheriff's deputies accused of wrongdoing have been alleged to belong to a secret society. That's according to a report prepared by county attorneys that lists nearly 60 cases, some of them still pending, and names 8 specific cliques.
I mean, you need to remake the sheriff's department altogether. Just dismantle it and remake it from the ground up. If you even remake it, I would say, hey, see what happens for a while. My guess is without sheriffs, you might have safer communities out there in Compton and East Los Angeles. Alex Villanueva needs to resign immediately, and local BLM LA organizers have been calling for his resignation. They have been on the front lines of this, taking to the streets, hitting the pavement, and calling it out because the case you just mentioned is one of so many young Black and Latino men here in Los Angeles who have been killed and murdered by the sheriff's department, which is enough already. But number 2 is Villanueva knows that there are gangs in his own department. How do you not know? Of course he knows, right? And then on top of it all, it's not just that there's gangs, they gather together and basically, as we sort of saw in the last video that we talked about, just kind of bro out and pal out about what went down and how it happened. Oh, you were tough. Oh yeah, we killed this guy. They are celebrating, they are rewriting the stories, and there is literally no one holding them to account for these murders of civilians, right? So I mean, it's just amazing, like the amount of corruption that is involved here. There are steps in the right direction, but look, we passed Measure J here in Los Angeles. It diverted 10% of police funds, general funds, away from the police and towards services. Turns out Measure J is actually being refunneled back in. They're finding some loophole to not actually divert funds to things like mental health services, homelessness services, So it is, there's so much work to do in this city, but my God, it needs to start with just a straight up dismantling of this sheriff's department.
Yeah, and this is why people, myself included, we say defund the police. We say reimagine policing.
Yes.
We don't want it to just be reformed. Y'all been doing that forever. We want it to be completely redone, completely reimagined. They're just too far gone in the LA Sheriff's Office for anybody to think that they will be able to fix this through some kind of new policy or training. And let me say this for the record, because the sheriff has gone on national media talking about this. Sheriff, either you're scared or you're a member of the gang. That's it. It's one or the other. No in between.